Hello everyone, Michigan Railfan 57 here. It's finally here. After a long fall and winter of waiting, we return to Greenfield Village, an outdoor part of the Henry Ford known for several historic buildings, vehicles, and of course, steam locomotives. Today was a special day, being Greenfield Village's public opening day for the 2025 season. I was not alone on this trip. I was accompanied by my good friend That Mish Railfan. Because of the significant number of people here today, Greenfield Village was running 2 trains. The first train was pulled by Calumet and Hecla Mining Company No. 3, Torch Lake, which you can probably tell I really like. And the second train was pulled by the Weiser Railroad's No. 1, Edison. Here's a brief history of the 2 engines. Torch Lake was built by the Mason Machine Works for the Calumet and Hecla Mining's Hecla and Torch Lake Railroad in 1873 to haul copper in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It was originally built at a narrower gauge and was later regauged to standard gauge. The engine was retired in 1933 and was donated to the Henry Ford in 1969. Torch Lake is the only surviving Mason Bogie locomotive, which in basic terms has its drive wheels on a bogie underneath the boiler. The bogie pivots in order to help the engine negotiate tighter turns. Torch Lake is also currently the oldest operating steam locomotive in the United States. Now on to Edison. Edison was built by the Manchester Locomotive Works in the 1870s to work at a quarry in New Jersey owned by Thomas Edison. It was originally built as an 040 with a tender, much smaller than it is today. It was gifted by Thomas Edison to Henry Ford in 1932, and Ford had it rebuilt to look like a Mason Machine Works 440. It sat in the museum until the 1970s, when it was restored to help Torch Lake run the railroad. We arrived at the village around 10:30 in the morning to find Edison picking up passengers at Firestone Station, so we decided to set up and watch it depart. Something that surprised me was the new crossing signals being installed at Firestone, which I wasn't very happy about. I'm used to seeing the wigwag at the front, and I think it looks great where it is, sort of iconic as it's one of the first things you see when you enter. However, safety's more important than nostalgia, and I guess a little bit of change can't always hurt. I guess I'll see how I feel once the crossings are fully installed. After Edison left, we headed over to Firestone Farm to see Torch Lake pass by the Griswold crossing. While we waited, we noticed Norfolk Southern B-19 parked here waiting a crew. Leading the train was NS 6955, an SD-60E rebuild. B-19 is known for having a caboose on the end of its train for shove moves into Oakwood Yard, so we hoped we could see its caboose, as you don't see many freight trains with cabooses in the present day. Anyways, Torch Lake made its way to the farm soon, allowing me to see my favorite locomotive for the first time since 2024. Unfortunately, the lighting wasn't really on our side, but the engineer was very friendly with the whistle. After that, we proceeded to the Roundhouse to see what was going on, and were surprised to find Baldwin's tender parked outside. We would later find out that Baldwin was awaiting heavy maintenance and, unfortunately, wouldn't be ready to operate until September. So that probably means no Baldwin videos for me this year. After that, we went over to Smith's Creek to watch Torchlight pull into the station and depart.
Right across from Smith's Creek is Edison Illuminating, where town is Edison traded in the generator that help power portions of the city of Detroit. You can learn how Henry Ford became his chief engineer while still building that motorcycle and getting a lot of encouragement from Edison. That's right.
After Torchlight departed, we waited for Edison to arrive and depart as well.
First one we see here is Mr. Located in Main Street, Michigan, roughly 8.5 miles southwest of Fort Huron, and about 62 miles north of Detroit. And was on the Greenfield Railroad line that ran between Detroit and Fort Huron. And it's a typical small town depot building. And the center building is actually telling you more about the building.
Once Edison left, we made our way down to the farm once again to catch Torch Lake and some better lighting at the other crossing. Unfortunately, I'd placed my tripod right underneath the crossing signal, so the audio of this video is mostly just crossing bell noises. We then made our way to the Susquehanna area, where we would once again get Torch Lake, this time at the crossing before the covered bridge. After it passed, we relocated to the baseball field to watch Torch Lake pass. That Mish Railfan let me use his tripod for this shot, so I actually managed to get some smooth panning of Torch Lake. As you can see in older videos, my cheap tripod is just garbage at doing anything related to panning.
Oh my God.
Once Torch Lake cleared, we set up at the crossing by the covered bridge once again to watch Edison pass. Once Edison passed, we relocated to the baseball field again to watch Edison go by. Me and that Miss Railfan decided to use our own tripods for this shot, so I decided to get a different angle of Edison passing by that wouldn't require any panning. Afterwards, we were making our way past the Smiths Creek station when all of a sudden we noticed B-19 start moving. We quickly rushed to Smiths Creek so we could see the caboose, and unintentionally ended up getting a neat little race as Edison departed. After Edison cleared, we headed over to Firestone Farm to get a better shot of Torchlight by the Griswold, with the lighting actually on our side this time. I decided to try and get a lower perspective than I usually do, and I think the shot turned out pretty good. Once Torchlight cleared, we set up at a platform on the sawmill to get an elevated shot of Edison crossing the road. I never knew about this spot before then, and I'm glad we found it when we were looking at the sawmill. after that, we headed down to Firestone Station to watch Torchlight arrive and depart. After that, we headed down to the pond by the Taste of History restaurant to watch Torchlight pass by with some great stack talk. Once Torchlight cleared, it was getting close to the time where Edison was to be put away for the night, so we headed back to Smith's Creek. Once we got there, Torchlight departed, and I managed to snag a phone video of it leaving. Next, we watched Edison arrive and depart Smith's Creek for its final lap of today. After Edison left, we watched Torchlight pull in and depart as well.
Probably heard this question, but I've heard that sometimes you don't run torch like in the summer. It's going to get too hot there, or
Sometimes, the boiler water.
Once Torchlight left, Edison arrived at Smith's Creek to unload all of its passengers. After Edison finished unloading, we relocated to the back of the Roundhouse to watch it put its passenger cars away and back up towards the Roundhouse. Once Edison arrived back at Smith's Creek, the switch was thrown, and we watched as Edison entered the Roundhouse to close out the day.
Yeah, we're in the balcony. Yeah, the brink meeting's here. Sure. Or we can meet you out there when it's done. Bye.
However, with me being myself, I wanted to get one last shot of Torchlight before we left. So I set up by the Thomas Edison statue to, unfortunately, have my camera's battery finally die after a long day of filming. Thankfully, I still had my phone to record Torchlight speeding away from the sunset, heading to Susquehanna Station on the final lap of the evening. What a fun day this was. It had been a long time since I'd been to the village on opening day, and I am definitely going again if I have the time next year. I had a blast filming trains with my friend, and I cannot wait to come back. Hopefully next time I do, I can see what the new crossing at the front looks like in operation. Thank you all for watching. This is Michigan Railfan 57 signing off. Have a great day.